heard like a lamb's back was shaved. So I said, "Hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the suit cannot spoil your white hair." And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was sleeping, he had such a sight that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black.
And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green lane, leaping, laughing, they run, and wash in the river and shine in the sun. Then naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon clouds and spots in the wind. And the angel told Tom, if he be a good boy, he have God for his father and never wants joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. Coming up in the fourth part, let's discuss the syntax of this poem. In the first stanza, we can note that it is a young boy telling us about his family. He said that when he was young, his mother died. Then his father sold him to the chimney sweeper master in order to get some money. With the words died and sold, we can know that the young child came from a poor family. The second stanza introduces another chimney sweeper called Tom Decker. He is like a foil to the young boy in this poem to enhance the distinctive characteristic of a chimney sweeper. Tom cried because his hair was shaved, and so the young boy tried to comfort Tom until he finally fell asleep. The next stanza is about Tom's dream of a chimney sweeper's heaven. Tom slept after he calmed down with his hair, and he got a dream that thousands of sweepers, including his friends Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all locked up in black coffins. In the fourth stanza, there was an angel with a bright key in his hand. He unlocked all the coffins and let the chimney sweepers all free. They ran happily like they had nothing to worry about. The fifth stanza tells us the condition of the sweepers after bathing in the river. By the time they were going to be free, they no longer needed to carry a bag containing the equipment to work. Then the angel told Tom that if he behaved like a good boy, he would obtain an equal reward. That is to say, Tom would go to heaven rewarded by God if he behaved well. But Tom woke up from his dream in the following morning with the young boy still trapped in their dangerous line of work. Then he realized that he must continue his obligation as a sweeper in this sixth stanza. They rose in the dark and got back to their real life. Then after knowing the syntax, we can come to analyze the speakers. We all know that the speaker is a young chimney sweeper since he had already told us his background at the very first beginning. But at the same time, he also narrated a story that happened to Tom Decker. And actually, when we look at those lines, there are three distinct characters in this poem. There are the speaker, which is the chimney sweeping child, the little boy Tom Decker, and the angel who appeared in Tom's dream. So when we think of three different kinds of people, we would notice that their speeches will be different. Therefore, let's have a look at the language, form, and tone of this poem. The poem uses simple language so as to fit the speaker as a young sweeper himself. The use of assonance has a gently playful sound so to support the poem's focus on the issue of childhood. For example, in the third line, William Blake chose to use the word whip instead of sweep to indicate that the sweeper is very young and trying to imitate the sound of sweep. And Blake used the repetition of E sound, which is the assonance, and helped to emphasize the suffering of the child who must to work to earn his living. Assonance also can be found in line 9 and 10 as the highlighted words quiet, night, and sight. They all have the I sound to make the repetition as assonance. Another point in the language is imagery. Line 4 in this poem gives us an image of the child sleeping with dirty body full of soot. When he walked to clean the chimney, he is very dirty. This phrase also shows that the child would always be struggling with the dirty soot from the chimney. And the use of all locked up in line 12 is to tell us that the chimney sweepers were in a restricted condition because they had to work in the chimney. And it is imagery since they were locked in a black coffin so that you can imagine how it is inside there. The use of symbols to signify ideas and qualities is known as symbolism. That is to say that the symbolic meaning of words is different from their literal meanings. That occurred like a limp speck in line 6 is the comparison of Tom with a lamp that symbolizes his innocence because the lamp is usually described as a harmless creature and a symbol of innocence. What's more, in order to increase the notion of the innocence of the boy, this phrase goes with a simile. The simile is the use of words like or as in a comparison between two things. Then for the form of the poem, the chimney sweeper is made up of 6 quatrains with 2 rhyming couplets in each quatrain. It is a typical format of Blake's poems. And for the rhyme scheme, there are 2 types of it. One is the AABB scheme. As we can see from the first quatrain, there are in pair of yarn, town, and whip, slip. Another scheme is called conceptual pair. For example, the words bear and hair in line 7 and 8 contrast Tom before and after he was shaved. Simple and informal diction is used in this poem from the point of view of a young child to produce an innocent tone. And in this poem, young sweepers are quite blissful and often aware of their poor condition and the dangers of their work. 2 contrasting colors are seen in this poem as well. There are black coffins that stand for the little chimney sweeper's troublesome life, and the angel's bright key as they hope for someday they would get released from the struggle if they behave in good. But here I leave 2 questions for you guys that are, does hope really help the sweepers? And will that dream really come true someday in the future? So finally, we come to our last part of the presentation, which is the use of language and education. From a communicative approach perspective, effective language and literacy learning come through individuals negotiating meaning for themselves. Literature offers individuals a large enough range of potentially motivating and interesting materials. Therefore, dealing with authentic language materials is to help learners from the earliest stage face unpredictable situations and events beyond their current level of linguistic proficiency. Effective individuals can read critically and discuss large ethical and political issues. And expertise in reading between the lines is exactly what we need in today's modern society. Therefore, language education should facilitate and even promote freer movement of ideas and people between communities, and extending mental and even physical horizons beyond current geographical and cultural limitations. So to connect these concepts with the poem Songs of Innocence, that is when we know the chimney sweeper, we can relate it to the social background of the Industrial Revolution by analyzing the syntax and the language. In this poem, William Blake draws our attention to the cruelty and the injustice of our society. Learning this poem helps us reflect on the social issue of child exploitation and think about how to deal with it. It was until 1802 that the United Kingdom started to address the child labor problem, which was to release the health and morals of apprentices' art. And although child labor is a crime, it is yet very common in our society even now. The United Union led us, the world keep focusing on this issue to make the past year, 2021, the International Year of the Elimination of Child Labor. Chimney sweepers were free in September 1875, but to end all forms of child labor, we still need to make efforts until 2025. So that's all for our presentation. And here's our references. Thanks for your listening. And then we can come to the Q&A session.